She had always loved the sound of the trumpet. The golden brass gleamed under the dim lights of the small jazz club where she practiced every evening. Her fingers moved carefully over the keys, coaxing melodies from the instrument that made her feel alive in a way nothing else could. Music had always been her escape, her comfort, and her way of speaking when words were not enough. That night, the club was quiet, with only a few regulars scattered around the tables, nursing drinks and chatting softly. She focused on a complicated piece she had been practicing for weeks, a mixture of classical technique and jazz improvisation. Her lips buzzed against the mouthpiece, her eyes closing as the notes filled the room. She didn't notice the man who had just walked in, his presence commanding even in the low light. He moved with a confident ease, carrying himself like someone who had spent years on stage, and yet there was a casual warmth to his smile. He found a seat near the corner, his eyes fixed on her as she played. There was something different about the way she handled the trumpet, a combination of raw talent and careful discipline that drew him in. He watched quietly, letting the music speak to him before he made his presence known. When she finished the piece, she opened her eyes and noticed him clapping softly, a small smile on his face. "That was impressive," he said, his voice smooth and encouraging. "You have a real feel for the instrument." She blinked, slightly startled. Compliments were always welcome, but she wasn't used to receiving them from strangers, especially someone who seemed so confident and accomplished. "Thank you," she said, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been practicing a lot lately." He nodded, his eyes still on her. "It shows. I'm curious though. Do you think you could handle a challenge?" She tilted her head, a mixture of curiosity and caution crossing her face. "What kind of challenge?" He leaned back slightly, a playful smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "A trumpet duel. Just you and me. Nothing too formal, just a friendly contest of skill. I like to see how far musicians can push themselves." Her heart skipped a beat. A duel? With a famous musician she had admired for years? It seemed almost impossible, and yet a spark of excitement ignited inside her. She had spent countless hours practicing alone, dreaming of moments like this, but now that it was real, it felt surreal. I don't know," she stammered, unsure if she was ready for something so sudden. "I mean, I've played a lot, but—" He raised a hand, shaking his head gently. "It's not about winning or losing. It's about seeing what you can do. No pressure, just music." She took a deep breath, her fingers stilling on the trumpet in her lap. Part of her wanted to run, to shy away from the spotlight, but another part, the part that had been quietly dreaming of this moment for years, urged her forward. There was something thrilling about the idea of playing side by side with someone she admired, about testing herself in a way she never had before. "Okay," she said finally, her voice steadying. "I'll do it." He smiled, a mixture of pride and amusement in his expression. "Good. Let's set a day. Tomorrow night, here in this club. Just bring your best." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. She couldn't focus on the music anymore, her mind spinning with thoughts of the upcoming duel. She went home, laying her trumpet on the couch and staring at it as if it had suddenly become both a friend and a challenge. She spent hours thinking about what to play, what techniques to use, and how to make her performance memorable. Sleep came fitfully that night, her dreams filled with notes, scales, and imagined duels. The next day, she tried to go about her usual routine, but it was impossible to ignore the nervous excitement building in her chest. Every time she picked up her trumpet, she felt the weight of the challenge ahead. She practiced for hours, repeating pieces she knew well and experimenting with new improvisations. Her fingers ached, her lips were sore, but her determination never wavered. This was more than just a duel. It was a chance to prove to herself what she was capable of. Meanwhile, the musician was preparing as well. He had played countless performances in his life, but there was something refreshing about a spontaneous duel with someone new, someone untested. It reminded him of the early days of his career, the thrill of discovery and the joy of music shared with others. He didn't want to intimidate her, but he also knew she had potential. This wouldn't be just a simple contest. It would be a meeting of two minds through music. As the evening approached, the club filled with regular patrons and a few curious newcomers who had heard whispers of the duel. The atmosphere was electric, a mixture of anticipation and excitement. She arrived early, carrying her trumpet and a small bag of essentials, her heart pounding. She found a quiet corner to warm up, her fingers moving over the keys as she tried to calm her nerves. He arrived shortly after, his presence immediately commanding attention. He greeted the crowd warmly, acknowledging their interest without stealing the spotlight from the young woman. He approached her, giving her a reassuring nod. "Ready?" he asked. She took a deep breath and nodded, feeling a strange combination of fear and exhilaration. "Ready." The club quieted as they began. The duel started with simple melodies, each taking turns, feeling out the other's style and skill. The young woman felt her confidence grow with each note, her nerves giving way to focus and determination. She was no longer just playing for herself. She was playing to match, to inspire, and to challenge. The musician smiled, clearly impressed by her technique and improvisation. He responded with his own creative flourishes, pushing her to elevate her performance. The duel became a conversation without words, a back-and-forth exchange of ideas and emotion through music. The audience watched in awe, sensing the unique connection forming on stage. Minutes felt like hours as the duel continued. She experimented with new rhythms, daring runs, and bold improvisations, surprising even herself with the choices she made. The musician adapted effortlessly, complementing her phrases, challenging her with intricate patterns, and encouraging her to take risks. It was exhilarating, and for the first time, she felt truly seen and understood as a musician. Finally, they paused, breathing heavily, but smiling widely. The club erupted in applause, the audience recognizing the rare magic of what they had witnessed. The musician stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have something special," he said sincerely. "Keep pushing yourself. You're going to go far." She could hardly believe what had just happened. The duel was over, but the impact lingered. For the first time, she felt the weight of her potential, the realization that years of hard work and dedication had brought her to this moment. She smiled, grateful and inspired, knowing that this was just the beginning of a journey she had only dreamed of. That night, as she walked home with her trumpet case in hand, the city lights reflecting off the streets, she felt a sense of purpose and excitement she had never known before. The dare had been more than a challenge. It had been a spark, igniting something within her that would shape the rest of her life. The music had always been her companion, but now it was also her path forward, and she was ready to follow it wherever it might lead. The next morning, she woke with the sunlight streaming through her window, the events of the previous night still swirling in her mind. The excitement of the duel lingered, but it was accompanied by a quiet anxiety. She had agreed to the challenge, and now she had to prove herself. The thought made her both nervous and determined. Music had always been her refuge, yet it now felt like a test, a moment that could shape her future. She began her day with the familiar ritual of warming up her trumpet. The notes rang out in her small apartment, each one echoing against the walls. She played slowly at first, focusing on precision and tone, then gradually increased the tempo, experimenting with improvisation. She could feel her fingers responding instinctively, but her mind kept returning to the challenge ahead. She thought about the musician, his calm confidence, and the way he had encouraged her last night. Could she really match him? Memories of her early years with the trumpet came flooding back. She remembered the first time she held it, awkward and unsure, yet captivated by the sound she could create. She thought of the long hours she had spent practicing alone, her fingers blistered and sore, her lips tired, but her heart full of hope. Her parents had been supportive but cautious, encouraging her to balance her dreams with practical choices. Still, the music had always felt like her calling, the thing she could not give up. Her mind drifted to her mentors and friends who had shaped her journey. She remembered a teacher who had once told her, "Music isn't just about playing the right notes. It's about telling a story with your heart." That phrase had stayed with her, guiding her through moments of doubt and fear. Now, As she prepared for the duel, it took on a new meaning. She realized that this challenge wasn't just about showing skill. It was about expressing herself, sharing her story through every note. Hours passed in practice, each session more intense than the last. She recorded herself, listened carefully, and made small adjustments. She experimented with different rhythms, tried bold runs she had never attempted in front of an audience, and practiced improvisation that would allow her to respond spontaneously to the musician's style. Her room was filled with the sound of the trumpet, a mix of triumphs and mistakes, each one teaching her something new. By the evening, her lips were sore, and her fingers ached, but she felt stronger, more prepared. Despite the preparation, doubts lingered. She wondered if she was ready, if she could hold her own against someone so experienced. Her mind replayed every mistake she had ever made, and she worried about faltering under pressure. But she refused to let fear control her. She reminded herself of why she played. Not for recognition, not for approval, but for the music itself. That thought calmed her, and she knew she would face the duel with honesty and courage. That afternoon, she met with a close friend who had always been honest with her. They sat in a quiet cafe, talking about music, life, and the upcoming challenge. Her friend offered encouragement, reminding her of the years of practice and the unique style she had developed. "You have something he doesn't," her friend said. "Your voice is yours. Don't try to imitate him. Just play from your heart." The words settled into her mind, giving her a sense of clarity and confidence she had been missing. As the day turned to evening, she returned to the club, carrying her trumpet carefully in its case. The room was nearly empty, and the dim lights created a quiet, intimate atmosphere. She found a corner to warm up, her hands moving over the keys almost automatically. The sound of the instrument filled the space, a familiar companion in a moment that felt anything but familiar. Her heart raced, but with each note, she felt a little more grounded, a little more ready. The musician arrived shortly after, his presence calm and reassuring. He greeted her with a nod, his eyes reflecting genuine interest and respect. They shared a quiet moment, listening to the hum of the city outside and the soft buzz of anticipation within the club. There were no words, only music and unspoken understanding. They both knew that this would not be about proving superiority, but about sharing an experience, a dialogue between two artists. As they began, she focused entirely on the music, letting her nerves fade into the background. The duel started with simple melodies, each taking turns, feeling out the other's style. She discovered that she could anticipate his phrases, respond to his improvisation, and add her own twists. Every note was a conversation, every phrase a statement of who she was as a musician. The audience, though small, leaned in, sensing the rare connection forming between them. She found herself taking risks, exploring the limits of her technique, and experimenting with sounds she had never dared to play before. The musician responded with encouragement, matching her intensity and creativity, creating a dialogue that went beyond notes on a page. The duel was no longer just a challenge. It had become an exchange of ideas, a celebration of music in its purest form. Between rounds, she caught her breath and listened carefully, noting his expressions and subtle cues. She realized that the duel was teaching her more than she had anticipated. It wasn't just about playing well. It was about listening, adapting, and connecting. She felt a deep sense of respect for the musician, who was not only challenging her, but also guiding her with patience and insight. Time seemed to blur as they continued. The room was filled with the sound of the trumpet, a mix of classical precision and jazz freedom. She noticed a change in herself, a growing confidence that had been absent before. She was no longer afraid of making mistakes. Instead, she embraced them as part of the process, knowing that each error was an opportunity to learn and grow. By the end of the evening, both musicians were exhausted but exhilarated. The duel had pushed her beyond what she thought possible, revealing strengths and abilities she had never fully recognized. The audience erupted in applause, but she barely noticed, caught up in the thrill of the experience and the bond formed through music. The musician approached her, a smile on his face. "You have grown so much in such a short time," he said. "Keep playing like this and you'll go far. Never stop challenging yourself." She nodded, her heart full of gratitude and excitement. The duel had been more than a test of skill. It had been a turning point, a moment that reaffirmed her love for music and her belief in her own potential. She packed her trumpet carefully, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, and walked home with a renewed sense of purpose. That night, as she reflected on the day, she understood that the challenge had been about more than proving herself to someone else. It had been about discovering what she was capable of, embracing risk, and finding courage in the face of uncertainty. Music had always been her sanctuary, but now it was also a path, guiding her toward new possibilities and experiences. She knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would continue to test and inspire her, and she was ready to embrace it fully. The day of the duel arrived, and the air was thick with anticipation. She arrived at the club early, carrying her trumpet carefully in its case, her fingers brushing over the keys as if drawing courage from the instrument itself. The small space was buzzing with whispers and soft laughter as people took their seats, curious to see a duel between a local rising musician and a famous performer. She felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but beneath it was a steady determination that had grown from months of practice and preparation. She found a quiet corner to warm up, running through scales and short improvisations, letting the familiar notes ground her. Every note felt alive, resonating not just in the room but in her chest. She focused on her breathing, recalling the advice of her old teachers and friends, to listen as much as she played, to let the music speak. With every breath and every note, she reminded herself that this was not just a competition, but a conversation with another musician. The famous musician arrived shortly after, his presence commanding without needing to be loud. He nodded to her, a gesture that conveyed respect and encouragement. She returned the nod, feeling a mixture of excitement and calm determination. There was a quiet understanding between them. Both knew that what they were about to do went beyond notes and scales. It was about connection, expression, and the joy of creating music together. As the duel began, she let the music flow naturally. The first few rounds were simple, almost cautious. They played short melodies, each listening to the other, feeling the rhythm and timing. The audience watched quietly, sensing the tension and the beauty of the unfolding performance. She noticed the subtle ways he reacted to her improvisations, and she adjusted in turn, creating a dialogue that was both challenging and exhilarating. With each round, she grew bolder. She experimented with faster runs, daring bends in the notes, and unexpected pauses. Her fingers moved over the trumpet keys with a confidence she had never felt before, and her lips shaped sounds that surprised even her. She realized that the duel was not about perfection. It was about expression, about letting the music reflect her heart and her journey. The musician responded with equal skill, but he also encouraged her by giving space for her ideas to shine. He added flourishes and variations that pushed her to think creatively, to anticipate and respond. The duel became a true conversation, a shared moment of artistry that transcended the usual boundaries of teacher and student, novice and master. Each note built on the last, weaving a tapestry of sound that captivated everyone in the room. She could feel the energy of the audience, not in pressure, but in shared excitement. People leaned forward in their seats, their faces reflecting awe and appreciation. She knew they were experiencing something special, something raw and alive. The club felt smaller, more intimate, as if everyone present were part of the music itself. Every note, every pause, every improvisation carried weight, meaning, and emotion. Hours seemed to pass in minutes as they continued. She explored rhythms she had only ever dreamed of, combining techniques she had learned in lessons with her own creative instincts. She felt a sense of freedom, realizing that mistakes were part of the beauty, that the unexpected could lead to brilliance. The musician responded in kind, challenging her with complex patterns, yet always in a supportive, inspiring way. Between rounds, they paused briefly, breathing heavily but smiling widely. She noticed how much she had grown in skill and confidence, how much she had learned from simply engaging fully with the music. He gave her a nod of approval, his eyes twinkling with genuine admiration. For her, this was validation, a recognition that her dedication and passion were real and meaningful. As the duel progressed, she began to add more personal touches, infusing the music with feelings that had been bottled up for years. The notes became stories of her struggles, her triumphs, and her dreams. She thought of the lonely hours spent practicing, the doubts she had faced, and the moments when she had almost given up. Each note she played was a testament to her resilience, and she felt a deep sense of release and joy. The musician responded by mirroring her emotion, matching intensity with intensity, softness with softness. They created a balance, a push and pull that made the duel not just a contest, but a shared experience of beauty. The audience, captivated, held their breath, sensing the unique chemistry between the two performers. It was no longer about fame or skill alone. It was about connection, authenticity, and the magic that happens when two artists communicate through their craft. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of music, they reached a natural pause. The room erupted into applause, a wave of appreciation and wonder. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, her body tired but her spirit soaring. The musician stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder and smiling warmly. "You have something rare," he said. "Keep pushing yourself. You're going to achieve great things." Her heart swelled with gratitude and pride. The duel had tested her, challenged her, and shown her what she was capable of. It was a defining moment, a turning point in her journey, and she knew that it would stay with her forever. The experience was not about winning or losing, but about discovering her own voice and embracing the courage to share it. As the audience continued to applaud, she packed her trumpet carefully, savoring the lingering notes in the air. She exchanged a few words with the musician, both of them smiling, knowing that the night had been more than a performance. It had been a dialogue, a shared story told in sound. Walking home, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, excitement, and possibility. Music had always been her companion, but now it was also a bridge, connecting her to a wider world and a brighter future. That night, lying in bed, she reflected on every note, every pause, and every improvisation. She realized that the duel had changed her in ways she could not fully articulate. It had given her confidence, taught her patience, and opened her eyes to the endless possibilities of creativity. The challenge had been daunting, but it had also been transformative. She knew that she was ready for whatever came next, ready to continue growing, exploring, and sharing her music with the world. The memory of the duel, of the energy, the connection, and the shared joy, would remain a source of inspiration for years to come. After the duel, the atmosphere in the club was electric. People lingered, talking excitedly about the music they had just witnessed. She stayed quietly to herself, still holding her trumpet, feeling the echo of the last notes in her chest. The applause and cheers had faded, but the energy remained, a kind of warmth that wrapped around her and made her feel both exhausted and alive. The musician approached her again, this time with a more serious expression. "You have grown so much in just a short time," he said. "I could see it tonight. You have talent, but more importantly, you have courage. That is rare." She felt a flush of pride, but also a wave of humility. Compliments were always hard to accept, especially when they came from someone she respected so deeply. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I've practiced a lot, and I guess it finally all came together." He shook his head slightly, smiling. "It's more than practice. It's heart. You let yourself be open, and that makes all the difference. Talent alone isn't enough. You have something special." That night, the news of the duel spread quickly. Word traveled through the city's music circles, and soon local journalists and radio hosts were talking about the young woman who had dared to face a famous musician and had held her own. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages of congratulations, offers to play at different venues, and invitations to meet other musicians. She felt overwhelmed but also deeply grateful. Everything was happening so fast, and she struggled to absorb it all. Despite the sudden attention, she remained focused on her music. She spent the next few days revisiting the pieces she had played, analyzing what had worked and what could be improved. She practiced tirelessly, pushing herself to refine her skills, but she also allowed herself moments of reflection. She knew that the duel had been more than a test of skill. It had been a revelation, a turning point in her journey as a musician. The musician reached out to her a few days later, inviting her to a rehearsal session at his studio. She hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready, but the curiosity and excitement won out. When she arrived, she found a space filled with instruments, sheet music, and an atmosphere of creativity. The musician welcomed her warmly and encouraged her to explore her own ideas. Over the course of several hours, they played together, experimenting with different styles, improvisations, and techniques. She learned quickly, absorbing his guidance without feeling pressured. He offered constructive advice, suggesting ways to enhance her tone, phrasing, and timing, but he also encouraged her to take risks and follow her instincts. The session was intense but invigorating, and she left feeling inspired and motivated to continue growing. In the weeks that followed, she began receiving invitations to perform at small jazz clubs, private events, and community gatherings. Each opportunity was a chance to share her music and connect with new audiences. She felt nervous before each performance, but the memory of the duel and the encouragement of the musician gave her confidence. She learned to embrace the nerves, understanding that they were part of the experience and a sign that she cared deeply about her craft. Her personal life also began to shift. Friends and family noticed a change in her demeanor, a new sense of purpose and confidence. She had always been passionate about music, but now that passion was paired with a belief in her own abilities. She began to take risks outside of her comfort zone, exploring new musical genres, collaborating with other artists, and even teaching a few beginner students. Music had become more than a hobby. It was a central part of her identity and her path forward. The musician continued to mentor her from a distance, offering advice, encouragement, and opportunities to perform. Their relationship evolved into one of mutual respect and admiration, with each learning from the other. He was impressed by her dedication and creativity, and she was inspired by his experience and generosity. Together, they formed a bond that went beyond the duel, a shared understanding of the power of music to connect people and transform lives. She also began to reflect on the lessons she had learned from the duel. It wasn't just about skill or recognition. It was about courage, perseverance, and the willingness to embrace opportunities. She realized that growth often comes from stepping into the unknown, from challenging oneself even when the outcome is uncertain. The duel had been a catalyst, opening doors and showing her what was possible when she trusted herself and her abilities. One evening, after a successful performance at a local club, she sat quietly in her apartment, her trumpet resting beside her. She thought back to the first time she had played in that small jazz club, to the moment the musician had dared her to a duel. The memory brought a smile to her face, a mixture of nostalgia and gratitude. That dare had changed everything, setting her on a path she could never have imagined. She reflected on the importance of mentorship and support. Without the musician's encouragement, she might not have taken the leap that night. She realized that guidance, belief, and constructive feedback could make a profound difference, especially for someone just starting to explore their potential. She made a silent promise to offer the same to others, to nurture and inspire young musicians who were eager to grow. As the days turned into weeks, she found herself thinking more about the future. The duel had been a turning point, but it was only the beginning. She dreamed of performing on larger stages, collaborating with diverse artists, and continuing to push the boundaries of her music. She understood that success would require hard work, persistence, and continuous learning, but she no longer feared the challenge. The duel had shown her that she could rise to the occasion, that she had the skill, creativity, and heart to succeed. Her confidence continued to grow with each performance. She experimented with new styles, blending classical training with jazz improvisation, creating a sound that was uniquely her own. Audiences responded enthusiastically, drawn not just to her technical skill but to the emotion and authenticity in her playing. She realized that music was not just about notes and rhythm. It was about connecting with people, sharing a piece of oneself, and creating moments that lingered in memory. Through it all, she never forgot the night of the duel. It remained a touchstone, a reminder of the courage it took to step forward, the thrill of challenge, and the joy of discovery. She often thought about how a single moment, a dare, had set off a chain of events that reshaped her life. She understood that opportunity often appears in unexpected ways, and that embracing it can lead to transformation. The musician reached out occasionally, checking in, sharing advice, and celebrating her successes. Their bond had grown beyond that one night, rooted in shared respect and love for music. He encouraged her to pursue every opportunity, to keep exploring and growing, and to never lose sight of the joy that had drawn her to music in the first place. She knew that her journey was far from over. There would be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but she had learned the value of resilience, preparation, and courage. The duel had taught her that growth comes not just from practice, but from embracing experiences, taking risks, and trusting oneself. It had shown her that music was a living, breathing force, capable of transforming both the player and the listener. As she looked ahead, she felt a deep sense of purpose. The duel had been more than a test. It had been an awakening, a revelation of her potential and the possibilities that lay before her. She was determined to honor that moment by continuing to grow, to share her music, and to inspire others as she had been inspired. The challenge had changed everything, and she was ready to face the future with courage, passion, and an open heart. Years had passed since the duel, but she still remembered that night clearly. The memory of standing on stage, facing the famous musician, and letting the music flow through her hands and lips remained vivid. It had been more than a performance. It had been a moment of awakening, a realization of her potential and the endless possibilities that awaited. The experience had shaped her career, her confidence, and her understanding of what it meant to be a musician. Over time, she had performed in numerous venues, from intimate jazz clubs to larger stages in the city. Each performance carried a piece of that first duel, the courage, the focus, and the joy of creating music that spoke to people's hearts. She had learned to embrace both the applause and the quiet moments, understanding that the true reward of music was the connection it forged between performer and audience. Each note was a conversation, a story, a reflection of her journey. She also began mentoring young musicians, sharing her experiences, her challenges, and the lessons she had learned along the way. She encouraged them to take risks, to practice diligently, and to trust their instincts. She emphasized the importance of heart and emotion in music, reminding them that technical skill alone was not enough. She told them about the duel, not as a story of fame, but as a story of courage, growth, and discovery. It inspired many of them to push beyond their comfort zones and to believe in themselves. Despite her growing reputation, she remained humble, remembering the early days when she had practiced alone in her small apartment, dreaming of opportunities that seemed far away. She valued every performance, every rehearsal, and every moment of collaboration. She knew that her journey was a combination of talent, hard work, guidance, and seizing opportunities when they appeared. The duel had been a turning point, but it had also been a reminder that success required persistence and openness to growth. The famous musician continued to be a source of inspiration and support. Though their interactions were less frequent, they stayed in touch, sharing advice, new musical ideas, and encouragement. He expressed pride in her achievements and often reminded her of the importance of staying true to herself. Their relationship had evolved from mentor and challenger to colleagues who respected and learned from each other. It was a bond built on shared passion and mutual understanding of the power of music. She also reflected on the personal growth that had come from the duel. She had learned to manage fear, to face uncertainty, and to embrace challenges as opportunities for learning. The confidence she gained from that night had influenced every aspect of her life, not just her music. She approached situations with a sense of calm determination, understanding that taking risks and stepping into the unknown could lead to unexpected and rewarding experiences. Opportunities continued to grow. She was invited to collaborate with other artists, record in studios, and even travel to perform in other cities. Each new experience expanded her understanding of music and her ability to express herself. She experimented with blending different genres, incorporating elements of jazz, classical, and contemporary styles, creating a sound that was uniquely her own. Audiences responded enthusiastically, drawn not just to her technical skill, but to the emotion, authenticity, and storytelling in her performances. Through all of this, she remained deeply aware of the importance of passion and dedication. She spent countless hours practicing, refining techniques, and exploring new ideas. She approached each performance as an opportunity to connect, to tell a story, and to touch lives. The discipline and focus she had cultivated over years of study and practice were paired with creativity and emotional depth, allowing her to grow continuously as an artist. She also reflected on the value of mentorship and support. The encouragement and guidance she had received from the musician during the duel and afterward had been transformative. She understood that helping others and sharing knowledge could have a profound impact, and she committed herself to supporting young musicians, passing on the lessons she had learned. She found joy in witnessing their growth, knowing that she could play a role in shaping their journey, just as she had been shaped. Over time, she realized that the duel had taught her more than technical skill. It had taught her resilience, adaptability, and the importance of embracing opportunities. She had learned to listen, not just to the music, but to herself and to others. She had learned that connection, emotion, and authenticity were as important as skill, and that the courage to take risks could open doors to new experiences and growth. The duel had changed her perspective on music and life, showing her that every challenge held the potential for transformation. She often returned to the small jazz club where the duel had taken place, not just to perform, but to remember the journey she had undertaken. The club had a special energy, a reminder of the night when a dare had sparked a turning point in her life. She shared the story with her students and fellow musicians, emphasizing the lessons of courage, preparation, and self-belief. It became a touchstone for her, a symbol of what was possible when passion met opportunity. Her life had been transformed by that single moment, yet she remained grounded. She valued every rehearsal, every performance, and every audience connection. She understood that the journey of a musician was ongoing, a continuous process of learning, experimenting, and sharing. Each note, each performance, each challenge was part of a larger story, a story of growth, resilience, and expression. As she looked toward the future, she felt a deep sense of purpose and excitement. She continued to dream, to explore, and to challenge herself, knowing that the path of a musician was never static. She embraced every opportunity, every challenge, and every moment of creativity, understanding that each was a chance to grow and connect. The memory of the duel remained a guiding force, a reminder of the courage, dedication, and passion that had brought her to this point. In the end, she realized that the duel had been more than a contest of skill. It had been a lesson in life, courage, and growth. It had shown her the importance of seizing opportunities, trusting oneself, and embracing challenges with an open heart. It had revealed the power of music to transform, connect, and inspire, and it had set her on a path of endless possibilities, one where passion, dedication, and courage could create a life filled with meaning and fulfillment. She continued to play, to teach, to inspire, and to grow. Her trumpet was more than an instrument. It was an extension of herself, a voice for her dreams and experiences. And as she performed, she knew that every note carried the memory of that pivotal night, the dare that had changed everything, and the journey that had shaped her into the musician and person she had become.